Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our May webinar with Pulse. On behalf of the UVI Institute for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness, I'm Zenzi Hodge. I'm here to welcome you to this month's presentation of the power of curiosity with Pulse. We are glad to have everyone that's joining us, whether you are joining us from, I see some people from Canada, joining us from our team in Africa, here in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So we do appreciate you taking the time to spend just a few minutes with us, getting a chance to know a little bit more about Pulse and participating in these events that we host with Dr. Love. For today's session, we're going to cover again the power of curiosity with Pulse. This session today will run about 30 minutes. I think we shared with you last month that we were trying a new model with our webinars and taking them to 30 minutes as opposed to the standard 45 to 50 minutes as we were doing before. So we'll still have the same amount of content, just giving a little bit more time for you to talk and interact with Dr. Love. Okay, so at this moment, I'd like to turn the conversation over to Dr. Nancy Love as she brings to you the power of curiosity with Pulse.
Good morning, everyone. And thanks for joining me here in Alberta. I'm not sure if any of you are curious about the wildfires that are burning here, but we've had quite a week or two here in Alberta with wildfires burning all over the north. So, one the size of New York City. It's a pretty large one. And that fire kind of brings up a lot of questions if you think about it. And that's what we're going to talk about this week is questions. So the power of curiosity is our topic. We're going to look at organizing that topic by using the Prepare, Uncover, Learn, Search, Explain frame, the Pulse frame. We're going to talk about the power of curiosity with Pulse, because Pulse really is about questions and about asking the right kinds of questions that get you to the right kind of future that you might be looking for, right? So I'm going to look at uncovering what you would like to know, because sometimes we forget what the purpose of our question is, and keeping that in mind is always very important. There's different kinds of questions, different kinds of questioning, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want you to learn what kind of questions get you to the answers you're looking for. Because sometimes you ask a question and somebody answers a different question because that's the question they would like to talk about. We'll talk about that. And then search, I want you to think about as we go through this, where might a question be the right answer? Where is a question more powerful than a statement, right? And then, as I usually do, I'll ask you to explain what you could do to improve the quality of questions in your own life and how you use them, how and where and when and what you use them for. So the power of curiosity, obviously power is our tool here for paraphrase, open question, wait, just down here, empathize, I'm going to just say this wait is here, empathize and reframe. So those are the 5 pieces of power. Paraphrasing, of course, just making sure that people understand that you've understood. Open questions is where we're going to spend most of our time today. Waiting is that powerful thing that you have to think about every now and then. Why am I talking? It's its own little acronym. Empathize, letting people know you understand the difficulty that they're in or sympathize with them or are experiencing their joy with them. Something to do with their, definitely with their emotional side of things. And then the reframe to what's important to them so that you can actually use that as a criteria to move on to other pieces, right? So we're going to talk about open questions mostly. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. That's the beginning of the open questions. And open questions are different than closed questions. And I know all of you know that. Because a closed question will get you a yes or a no. But too often in our lives, what we do is we ask a closed question because we think we know the answer. So we lead people to where we think they need to go, rather than actually taking the time to figure out what it is that they want, right? Because all of this false stuff is really about how we as human beings get over on the other side of the conversation and really truly understand what the other person is trying to share with us. And to do that, I mean, you need courage, as we've talked about, but you also need curiosity. You really need to care about what it is they have to say and what it is they're going through. And in order to really be super curious and get the answers you need, open questions are the way to go. A closed question would be, you know, have you heard about the fires in Fort McMurray? Yes or no, right? An open question would be, what do you think the impact of this fire is going to be on Alberta and the oil prices all over the world? Right? Which is a different kind of opportunity for you and your brain to work and produce maybe some shared knowledge, right? So you want to really use open questions in a very powerful way by taking any statement you might make and turning it into a question that other people then may feel the obligation to answer, right? So now you're starting a conversation. Really good open questions like describe a situation. That's an open question because you're actually asking of the other person to speak. It's as simple as that, right? But there are benefits to curiosity. I found this on the internet. I thought it was kind of a cool thing. The trait is instinctual. People are generally instinctually curious, innate, and powerful. I mean, a lot of the discoveries in the world have come from curiosity. I don't even need to say that, right? That kind of goes without saying. In French, they say ça va sans dire. And it's shaped, our curiosity, though, has boundaries, right? And it's shaped by our ideas, our experiences, and our environment. It's hard for us to be curious about things that we absolutely don't have in our circle of influence or in our sphere of knowledge. And it's nourished by inquisitiveness, interests, and passions. Especially passions. We get very passionate about things that we're curious about. And I want to make a very clear difference between curiosity, not accusatoriness, right? Because sometimes when we ask a question, even an open question, it comes with an edge to it, right? And we're saying, you know, what did you do in that situation rather than what did you do in that situation? And really it's as simple as tone of voice. Curiosity, in fact, I found online, and this was kind of interesting, a reason that curiousness was discouraged because sometimes people take it as not caring. Curiosity can sound like that you're interrogating someone, but really to be genuinely curious and to be, you know, looking at the ideas, as this says, be less curious about people and more curious about ideas. Then you get into a place where you're not accusing anybody of anything, and then people are more likely to let their defenses down and enter a conversation with you, right? So replace that fear of the unknown with curiosity. Right? Because a lot of our accusatoriness comes from being afraid of what we don't know, afraid of looking stupid, afraid of just not being able to answer the question that's being asked of us. Positive questions get positive responses, and I mean that comes from David Cooper, Ryder and the Gang, all about appreciative inquiry and how we use that. Because when you change the question, you change everything. When I started doing mediations, the question at the beginning of the process sounded something like, so tell me what happened. You know, what happened to you, you poor thing, is what it said. I mean, there was a comma and an understood, you poor thing, at the end of it. And now what we do is we ask the question, what are you here to resolve? Which is a totally different question that gives a totally different answer and puts people in a different frame of mind. So by just changing that simple little question about what happened in the past to what are you here to resolve, we change the whole perspective and mindset of the people who are answering it. You can do that with just about any question. Even just by changing the tone on your question, you can change what kind of information you get back and what kind of relationship you're going to have with the other person. What is a question? This is kind of cool. What is a question? That's a question about questions. A question is different than a statement because it imposes an obligation on the listener. They have to think and they have to respond. Think about that. That's the difference, right? When I make a statement, there's no obligation on you to do anything except accept it or not, reject it, right? But if I make a question, make it into a question, now you, as the listener, have an obligation to respond to me. So that's a different, and the question has two parts. One part is topic, and the other part is the demand. And not a demand, but a demand on you to, or on the listener to think about and respond, right? So, and what they've found in the research, and a lot of this comes from John Zawatsky, you can Google him, he's got lots of interesting videos on questions, mostly related to journalism, but some really interesting questions that would also apply to any everyday conversation in the workplace. But he says sequencing questions chronologically creates momentum, and people begin to actually answer questions you haven't even asked. So you learn a lot by setting the sequence chronologically. And of course, if you're familiar with Pulse, you know that's what we do. We start with the past, we move to the present, and then we move to the future. And it's always that path, past, present, future, in a very deliberate way, right? And as that leads you to answers, and answers are a function of the questions asked. This is a really important part of it too, and why the Pulse questions are so deliberate and so deliberately chronological, but also deliberately positive, because we want to create a positive future for the people in the conversation. Just a reminder that there are 9 types of questions. If people are coming towards you and they are coming from the past, or you're asking about the past, usually it's about success. How has this worked in the past? What's good about it from the past? If, on the other hand, you're talking to someone who's really being very deliberate about perfection and seeking perfection and following the rules, then you're going to change the question a little bit, at least to get them on side. Remember that, as we've learned in other webinars, it's about matching and moving. So if somebody's moving with you and they're in the present and they're following the rules, then the questions that you ask will be different of them. You'll be asking, what rules were you following when this happened? What do you think might change now? How could this be perfect in the future? So you use their language and you follow along. And this is a whole other course, but I just wanted to remind you that, sometimes if you're asking a question from, let's say, a differentiation point of view, and you're in the past in a way, and somebody else is on excitement, and they're in the future, then your languages are kind of at odds. You're not speaking the same language if you're not both in the past or both in the future. So the kinds of questions that get you the answers that you're looking for, let's talk about that, because there's 2 ways to do this. There's the going deep questions, the tell me more questions, if you like, or anything that kind of, lets people talk about one subject on a deeper level, and so it's like peeling the onion, kind of going deep. Or there are other kinds of questions that are surface questions, and they broaden the topic a little bit. And there are lots of examples of both of those kinds of questions. really for you, the purpose has got to be clear. You got to know what you're trying to do. Or if you're going deep, then go deep and keep the person on the topic and get better answers about either how they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're doing about it, and going in a directly drilling down, as they say, into that topic. Whereas if the topic is a little narrow and you want to broaden it, then you're going to ask questions that move people out in a way. So there is a purpose, a process, and a protocol for questioning, and as always, it's, gentle, honest, open, specific talk. Be specific in all of that as well. Because the purpose here in any questioning is to build shared knowledge, right? You want answers. You may want to give answers to some questions that they're answering. So the whole thing is about building shared knowledge. Let's build some understanding between you and I. And it can also lead to changing zones. And we talked about that last time. The whole idea of moving from the red zone through the pulse frame into the green zone and being in a place where you can look at a brighter future together. So questions that work best when, okay? And this, I think, is really important, and it really goes to that appreciative inquiry piece. And the whole idea that, as questioners in the workplace or in a high conflict situation, we really need to have this kind of creed that we follow. We need to be genuinely curious because we need to have people understand that we do care, that we are interested, and we do want to understand. And so it has to be based on genuine curiosity. And they do follow a protocol, which I've mentioned: gentle, honest, open, specific talk. Speak gently so other people can keep listening. Be honest and open to hear what's being said. And be specific. Use examples so that people are building understanding of each other and sharing knowledge. Okay? Questions that are followed by evidence that you have heard the answer are the best kind too. You don't just listen to it and go, You say, so what you're saying is this, and you say what you've heard so that they have a chance to, first of all, understand that you understand, and second of all, to ask you a question or to base the rest of their answer filling in the gaps that you may not have heard or understood. So that's where the paraphrase, open, question, wait, empathize, reframe power tool is. It really is about giving people answers so that you can then hinge the next question on what you've said to them. So this is you're interested in this. The fire in Fort McMurray has really impacted Alberta and the oil patch. What about that is significant to you? And you wait and you empathize. It must be difficult for you. It would be an empathize piece and then a reframe. It sounds like the economy in Alberta, which has suffered already due to falling oil prices, is important to you and you'd like to help somehow. Right? So that would be your paraphrase, open, question, wait, empathize, reframe. Questions work best when you ask the question you want answered, but are willing to listen for what question they answer. And that's a little tricky. But sometimes people are not answering your question, they're answering their own. And really that's where deep listening comes in. So that's where you paraphrase it back and maybe you get a chance to ask your question again. But really working at finding out what you want to know, right? Using that purpose piece, keeping that purpose in mind all the time, using the gentle, honest, open, specific talk protocol, and keeping the process in mind. Am I going deep or am I going wide? What am I doing here? And very carefully and deliberately, creating questions that get you to where you want to go. So in the uncover stage, we really want to go back. What are you here to resolve today? What are we talking about? When was it different? When was it good? And what would it take to get back to that? Remember that every time we ask a question, we change the mindset of the people that are listening to us. And we focus their attention somewhere else, right? That's what questions do. So making sure that we are focused on the appreciative side of this again, we can ask questions about what has been working, what works instead of what isn't working, right? And this is just a quote from this appreciative inquiry. If what we focus on is magnified by our attention, we want to be sure we are magnifying something worthy. And so again, just mention that again. Ask questions that are deliberately positive and framed in a way that allows people to share knowledge. So going deep really is about paraphrasing, asking open questions, wait for and allow a full response. Don't rush people if you really want to know where they are and what's going on for them. Wait is a question in and of itself. If I just sit quietly and look at you, eventually you're going to answer a question. It could be your question or my question, but allowing that time is super important because some people process things more slowly than others and may have to use that time to find the courage to answer the question or to actually say out loud what it is that's really bothering them. Empathize by naming the level of emotion. This has been difficult for you, right? Those kinds of things, and reframe to the value of each. Beliefs, expectations, assumptions, concerns, and hopes. That's where you want to get to because those become your criteria for a resolution. And so really in the learn stage, the question is all about uncovering beliefs, expectations, assumptions, concerns, and hopes. That's all it's about. That's the purpose of this stage, and it's the purpose of going deep. What are their underlying values? What is it that's missing for them? Going wide, that happens in the search stage. Questions for brainstorming, right? Future focus. What's possible? What else? What could you do? What are your options? What if? How would that work? Right? And so now we've moved from the past in uncover what are you going to resolve today, or what happened, when was it good, through the present. Why is this important to you? What are your underlying beliefs and values? That's the present. To the future. So we've done that chronological thing that Sawatsky suggests so that we build a momentum for a positive future in the end. Okay? And then we get to the explain stage. What are the details? Who will do what by when? How will we know it is working? What could we do if we get off track? Right? Here's where we put the puzzle pieces together. I don't know why that happened. We put the puzzle pieces together and we create some shared knowledge. Right? Oh, and I just want to remind people, it's so important to ask and don't tell. Asking makes such a difference. When you ask people about what they're thinking about rather than telling them, it is very powerful because you can't know what they know. You can think you know what they know, but you can't do that until you have asked them and you listen to what they say. Not listening with purpose to prove that you're right, but listening for what's right for them. Okay? Yeah, I wrote there, accept that you cannot know how it is for them unless they tell you. Okay, and this is another thing I found on the internet, the law of curiosity. Growth is stimulated by asking why. Why is that important to you? What could you do and what will you do? Right? What are the guiding questions here? Here are the guiding questions. How will the conversation proceed? What is the conversation about? Why is the subject important? Given the reasons, what could you do differently? What do you agree to do? Those are deliberate questions set up specifically to use in difficult situations. But they are chronological, they do create momentum, and they're stated in a way to get at what we need to get at in order to resolve differences between people. Changing a statement into a question is easy because this is something that I'd like for you to try and do. You just add who, what, where, when, why, or how, or whom, or which, or whatever to the front of it. And raise your tone at the end of the question. You can change a statement into a question just by changing the tone of voice, right? I just did it, right? Canadians are bad for that. We just add right at the end of everything and make it a question. And it's interesting because apparently women generally have a tendency to make every statement a question just by saying something like this. And it sometimes makes them sound uncertain. There are times when you want to sound uncertain, and there are times when you don't. And so really making the difference between your questions and your statements is important. And adding these couple of words in the front of any statement you make can make a difference. How, where, when can you use a question instead of a statement? When the purpose is to engage, when the process is collaborative, guided by curiosity. Don't pretend to care. If you're not genuinely curious, then just make statements. Where there is room for differing perspectives, because they will probably have one, and where you don't know the answer, ask the question. I love this little owl. I love owls anyway. If any of you have been to my apartment, you know there's owls all over the place. So be curious. Curiosity is the spark behind the spark. I love that. It's the spark behind the spark. Be curious. What is going on for them? I remember when teachers would come into my office all upset about anything. That was my first question, was like, what did they have for breakfast? You know, like it's, wow. Because they're not yelling at me, they're yelling for themselves. And that's something I always had to keep in mind. What happened to them, right? Be curious. Explain one small step. You can email it to me at nancylove@pulseinstitute.com. And thank you. Here we've gone through the power of curiosity. Make sure you know what you'd like to know. Keep to that purpose. What kind of questions get you the right answers? Think about deep questions and surface questions. And remember that it's all about shared knowledge, right? And think about what might a question be. I'm sorry. First day of my new mouth. Where might a question be the right answer? Questions can be answers. And what could you do to improve the quality and timing of your own questions? Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation, Dr. Love. At this time, we'd like to open the floor to questions. To ask a question to Dr. Love, on your webinar toolbar, you will see a yellow hand icon. If you click on that, that will give us an indication that you would like to ask a question, and your mic will be opened, and you'll have an opportunity to present that question to Dr. Love. All right, we have a question from Austin Gammy. Austin, your mic is open.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
I can, all the way from Africa. Thank you.
Great. This is a very positive presentation. My question has to do with the connectivity between the period of questioning and the use of the beach in particular. My familiarity with the rest is not in doubt, but that of the beach, how do we do the connectivity between the questioning and the placement of the question in the beach?
Okay, so I think, thank you for the question, Austin, and thanks for being on. I think the beach part is when you're asking deliberately the questions about why is this important to you, the beach is the underlying value, right? It's a set of beliefs, expectations, assumptions, concerns, and hopes. And so when you're asking questions about that, it really does sound directly like that. What do you believe about this situation? What are you expecting to happen? What assumptions have you made about this? What are you concerned about and what do you hope for? So your questions can be deliberately those. And what you're trying to do then is to identify what is their underlying value. And of course, it'll be one of those 9 points that we've already identified. And so it could be that they are looking for, I'm sorry, I'm messing this up trying to find it. There we go. They could be looking for success, they could be looking for power, and then that beach then becomes the basis for creating a future together. So now you have some other questions. What could we do to make sure that you feel successful? What could we do to ensure that you feel secure in what's going to happen next, right? So the beach is, you can get to it very directly by asking those questions. What do you believe about this situation? Because that's our present tense values or interests, sometimes referred to as interest and interest-based conversations. And those become criteria for the next step. So really just go to it, just ask, what is your belief about this? And see if by listening to the answer and paraphrasing that answer, you can't identify where somebody is, and then you know what it is, what it's going to take for them to feel comfortable for moving to the next stage. Was that helpful?
Thank you for your question, Austin. Do we have any more questions from our audience this morning? I just received a question through chat. The question is, can the presentation be emailed to us? We do have all of our webinars available in record, so you will get an email tomorrow through GoToWebinar with access to the webinar. We also have the full webinar available on our YouTube channel. What we are working on as another extension of this project is making some of our content available electronically, and we'll have a further announcement about that in June, so you will have an opportunity to access some of this content going forward this summer.
Thank you for asking.
And I think we may be able to take one more question from the audience. Okay, Austin, your mic is open.
Yeah, thank you. Once again, I just want to find out, this is supposed to be knowledge or skills acquisition by practitioners, so that in helping your clients, this will form the basis of the preparation or the prepared stage of the clients for the purpose of a mediation or a facilitation process. Is that right?
Yes, well, and it can be used in just everyday conversation, in those preventive conversations that you have, so that you don't end up having to do a mediation. You know, if you can use it as a coaching technique as well, just to ask your questions in a way that doesn't create defensiveness, then you can maybe avoid those high conflict situations, as well as using it in the high conflict situation, yes.
Yeah. I think I understand you perfectly from that angle. That's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question. And as we get ready to close, I just wanted to go over with you what is our schedule of events through June, taking us into the summer months. And then in our June webinar, we will have a chance to share with you some of the changes that we are making to our UVI Pulse offering. But on June 8th, we have our next webinar, which is the Heart of Compassion with Pulse. And many of you have joined us over the last 3 or 4 months, and we've been doing a series of sessions where we focus more in-depthly on how we use Pulse in certain situations. And so this webinar in June kind of brings that series to a close. We wanted to also share with you, for those of you that are in this area or that are interested in traveling to this area, some of the live events that we will be hosting in our Caribbean locations. Through the month of July, on July 11th through the 15th, we will have our 5-day mediation certification course. This is a wonderful course for people that want to take their Pulse experience a little bit further, understand how to move through PULSE, going through actual simulations of mediations and learning the techniques of the Pulse frame. And then out of that course, it's a 40-hour course, and out of that you will be certified to use the UVI Pulse methodology. We started a course called From Confrontation to Conversation, which we opened up to law enforcement professionals, and we started to deliver that a few months ago, and we're bringing that course back. So for those of you that are in law enforcement or in the military, have the opportunity to interact with individuals from a safety and security standpoint, perhaps this is the course for you. We will bring From Confrontation to Conversation to St. Thomas on July 18th through the 19th. It's a 2-day course. And on July 21st and 22nd, we will go back to the beginning and take people through an introduction to UVI Pulse. We're hosting that course in St. Martin in the Netherlands Antilles. If you are not aware, the University of the Virgin Islands just started a partnership with the University of St. Martin, so we are now extending our content even further throughout the Caribbean. On July 25th through the 27th, we will host our first UVI Pulse Train-the-Trainer course. That is on St. Thomas. So for those of you who have actually completed our mediation certification course, this takes your Pulse experience one step further and trains you to deliver Pulse content to other individuals, whether in your home location, nationally, or internationally. And then on July 29th, we will introduce our shift course on the island of St. Croix. So we do hope that if you are in this area or interested in coming to this area, you'll stop by and register for one of our courses. You can get more information about these courses on our website, which is ilo.uvi.edu. Thank you very much for joining us for our May webinar. Have a great day, and we look forward to participating with us next month for our June 8th webinar, The Heart of Compassion with Pulse. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.